I believe we are ready to start. Just wanted to remind everyone that we are going to start with our webinar. So here with us, we have Dylan as the Admission Director of MBA Admissions at the Gabelli School of Business. And today we're going to talk about the difference between Masters and MBA. There is a dedicated time for all of your questions. So drop all the questions that you might have into the Q&A box, and we will be answering them at the end of the presentation. Dylan, I'll leave you the floor, and looking forward to receive all of your questions, guys.
Thank you, Federica. Hello, everyone. It's fantastic to see so many people attending this webinar. And if anyone's joining late, if you want to drop in the chat box where you're calling in from, I think that's always fun. I'm always fascinated by the state of technology that we're connecting all over the world. And I think we have a fairly interesting topic to discuss today, and it's certainly in my role overseeing admissions for a business school. I think it's one of the most common questions that I receive from prospective students is, what is the difference between, say, a specialized master's program in analytics and getting an MBA with a concentration in analytics? And I think this is a question that really people weren't asking this 20 years ago, because specialized masters at business schools, especially in the States, are a relatively new phenomena. But nowadays you see all over the world that specialized masters are becoming increasingly popular. So I do want to spend some time really breaking down the differences between the two degree programs. You have the agenda here in front of you. So we'll talk in general terms. Towards the end, I'll give you just a brief snapshot of what we offer here at the Fordham University in New York City. And then, like Federica said, any questions that come up throughout the conversation, please put them in the Q&A tab or in the chat box, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. All right, so let's get started with talking about the profile between an MBA student and a master's student. And I think this is really where the launching off point should be for prospective students when they're picking which type of program is best suited for them. The full-time MBA is a program, and I'm speaking really in American business school terms, right? Because there's a lot of different types of MBA programs all over the world, but certainly when it comes to American-based MBA programs, these are degrees that are designed for people who are in their early career. They've usually been working, on average 4 to 5 years in industry, and they're looking to leave their job, pursue a master's in business administration in order to be able to pivot or make some sort of change in their career. So they might want to, they might have worked in finance for 3 or 4 years. They decided they wanted to change their industry. They want to work in marketing. And so they leverage a full-time MBA degree in order to be able to facilitate that transition. So it's important to note that when it comes to admissions considerations, that is a major prerequisite for applying to an MBA program in the States: work experience. And I think that's where a lot of students, if you're in a position where you're looking to pursue a business degree and you haven't worked for 3, 4, 5 years, that already makes your decision a little bit more narrow, because for most full-time MBA programs in the States, we are looking for people who have on average 4 to 5 years of work experience. On the specialized master's side, the profile is very different. Typically, a specialized master's student is someone who is coming straight from their undergraduate degree. They may have worked for 1 year, maybe up to 2 years, but typically they don't have a lot of work experience under their belt. And they're looking to essentially do a deep dive into a specific functional area. I will talk a little bit more about the differences in curriculum shortly, but simply from a profile perspective, I think that's where you'll see the biggest difference between the two programs. Specialized masters are typically younger people who haven't worked versus a full-time MBA, people who are in their early to mid-career. That being said, I'm talking in generalities here. So Are there people who have worked 5, 6, 7 years who are looking to do a specialized master's? Absolutely. But just as far as a typical profile, I think that's where you can really see that that departure between the two. Lastly, I'll quickly just mention the financial investment piece. MBAs typically are more expensive. An MBA degree is more expensive. Generally, the return on the investment is pretty sizable, and we'll talk about salaries in a moment. But I think that's another important kind of profile difference. You're not making as big of a financial investment for a specialized master's as you would for a full-time MBA. Let's talk about the differences when it comes to career goals. So, and as I go through these differences, keep in mind that profile slide that I just talked about, because I think it's important when you're considering these differences. A full-time MBA, when it comes to their decision to pursue a full-time MBA degree, they're looking to enter into a middle management position, right? The idea is they've worked for 4 years at a company. They want to change their career, but they don't want to start at the entry-level positions in a new industry, right? If you've worked for 4 years in banking and you want to work in marketing, you don't want to have to quit your job and then start at the same place that someone right out of an undergraduate degree would start. And that's really what an investment in an MBA degree provides you. It allows you to make a career change, but you start at a middle management position. You start in a leadership role. So that's a really important differentiator when it comes to a full-time MBA versus a specialized master's program when it comes to where people are going. Specialized master's degrees lead students to entry-level positions, right? They can be very high-paying entry-level positions, but typically you're not going to be hired into any sort of leadership position out of a specialized master's degree. And that's because employers, going back to what I was saying earlier, when they come to recruit someone who has, say, a specialized master's in finance, they're going in with the expectation that you have not worked before. You might have a couple of internships, but you're not someone who has any management experience. And so they're going to hire you into entry-level positions. The full-time MBA is quite the opposite. When employers are coming to recruit full-time MBAs, the expectation is, okay, these are people who have worked. They've worked for 4, 5, 6 years. They have management experience. We're going to hire them into a middle management position. So quickly, just to jump to the last bullet point here when it comes to salary, while the MBA is a bigger investment of money, the return is typically much larger when it comes to salary and signing bonus, right? That's really what justifies the price tag of an American MBA degree, is that you're going to get a 6-figure salary, a high return when you land your job after 2 years. The specialized master's degrees, again, you can get really top-notch positions in all different types of industries with a specialized master's degree, but the salary is typically going to be on the lower end compared to an MBA student who has 4 to 5 years and who's getting hired into a management level position. One other thing I want to mention on this slide, this notion of the types of skills that you're gaining in an MBA versus a specialized master's degree. An MBA degree is designed to do 2 things. It's designed to give you a broad foundation across all of the functional areas of business, as well as that ability to specialize in a specific functional area. A specialized master's degree is essentially the MBA without the broad foundations, if that makes any sense. So you have specialized master's degrees in finance, right? In accounting, in marketing, right? These are specific functional areas of business. As an MBA student, you will be taking finance courses, you will be taking marketing classes, you'll be taking analytics courses, you'll be taking, basically every topic that involves forces on a business. Okay, so when it comes to the skills that you're essentially acquiring, you can tell just by how broad an MBA curriculum is that you're preparing yourself to be a manager at a company, right? An effective manager is someone who understands all of the forces on a business, right? You might have a day-to-day that's involved in a specific functional area, right? You might be, heavily in the marketing division of a company, but as a manager, you may be managing people in accounting. You might be managing people in your finance department. So you have to at least have a baseline proficiency in all of these functional areas if you want to be a successful manager. And that's what an MBA degree is designed to do. It's designed to give you those skill sets. I'll share one story because I think it is pertinent, and it happened a couple of months ago. And I think it's a good way to kind of think about the differences between a full-time MBA skill set versus a specialized master's skill set. We had we're in Midtown Manhattan, as you can see from my virtual background. So we're surrounded by a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and so we're very lucky to have a lot of guest speakers that come in and speak to our students. And we had one of our alums come in, and he's very high up at a Fortune 500 company, and he was explaining to the MBA class, how he views MBAs at his company. And he was explaining, when I have a specific finance question, right, a valuation question, he's like, I go to my finance wizards in the finance department. These are people with specialized master's degrees in quantitative finance and financial engineering and finance, right? They have all these very specific specialized degrees in that functional area. And he's like, and they can answer all my finance questions. Same thing with accounting, the people who have the specialized master's degrees in accounting and have worked at big four firms, they're the brilliant accounting minds that can answer any accounting question. And then he said, they had recently had a vote about whether or not to open up a branch of their company in Tokyo, Japan. And they formed a committee to essentially weigh the pros and the cons and the impact of making such a decision if they were to open up a building in Tokyo. And he explained that everyone on that committee had an MBA degree, because the people on that committee had to be trained to be able to look at a macro level decision, like opening up a branch of a company in a different location. They have to be able to look at that decision through the lens of every functional area of a business. What are the financial implications? What are the accounting implications? What are the HR implications, staffing implications, right? You name it. They were the ones who were able to kind of back out of just a specific functional area and look at that huge decision from a macro level perspective. And that is really the power of an MBA degree, right? Both MBA students and specialized master students can lead tremendously successful careers, but in different spaces. Experts in a specific functional area versus someone who has that ability to kind of back up and look at everything from a bird's eye view. So I thought I'd share that story because I think that's an appropriate way of kind of summarizing the differences as far as career potential between the two. All right, I think we have one more slide here, and I've actually touched upon this a little bit in what I was discussing in the other slides, but obviously the format and the curriculum will be different for a full-time MBA student versus a specialized master's student. Typically, MBA programs in the States are 2 years. They essentially it's what I had just described, and I'll pull up this slide actually because I think it might be helpful to describe or to visualize what a typical MBA program will look like. The first year is, like I had mentioned, all of the foundational areas of business. That's where you really get that broad skill set across all of the primary functions: accounting, stats, marketing, economics. Your second year is when you specialize, right? So that's when you'll start to take elective courses, and you can start to concentrate a little bit more in specific functional areas. So just to give you a sense of our concentrations, this is where these are the categories in which our students can specialize in their second year. This will differ for MBA programs all over the world, but these are where our concentrations lie. And again, this is after you've taken in your first year all of these other foundational business courses that are required for any MBA student to graduate. Certainly that's I would say the typical profile for most full-time MBA programs in the States. There is a focus on not only the theory behind the subject matter, but also applying subject matter in real world scenarios, right? So just looking at the MBA first year, you have the box in red and the box in blue. Both of those programs involve real life consulting projects with real companies, right? So you're taking what you're learning and you're actually doing real work for companies. There is an internship between your first and second year that is essentially a requirement for all MBA students. That's where you're actually working at a company, and generally that's how you're getting a full-time job, is you're having that internship convert. So while you do get some theory as far as the classroom work, there really is a focus on the application of the content that you're learning. Specialized master's degrees are a little bit different in the sense that they are much more grounded in theory. I think more and more now what you'll see is, this experiential learning or real applications are more popular nowadays. But I would say they're not as prevalent as what you would see in an MBA program. Specialized master's degrees are typically not 2 years. Some are, depending on the intensity or the specific subject matter. But I would say on average, specialized master's degrees are 1 year or even less. And as you can see, this is just a snapshot of the specialized master's degrees that we offer at Gabelli. With the exception of the quantitative finance program, which is a 2-year program, all of these programs can be completed in a year. So again, hyper-focused in specific functional areas. The only exception would be a management degree, the MS in management, where it's a little bit broader as far as the specific courses you're taking. But you can just look at kind of how we break down the buckets of programs: analytics degrees, technology degrees, finance degrees, professional services degrees, right? These are specific slivers of a business compared to the MBA, where you're getting that broad foundation. So this was obviously just kind of a general overview. I hope this was helpful. Certainly I know before I understood the business school landscape, this was something that was not very clear to me what the difference was, but hopefully I shed some light on kind of the general differentiators between MBA programs and MS programs. Obviously, take this with a grain of salt. I am kind of generalizing as far as American programs are concerned. You do see more and more MBA programs that are constrained to 1 year. Some are online. Online MBAs used to not exist 10 years ago, and now they're pretty popular. So there's always going to be some outliers as far as the main characteristics in each type of program, but hopefully this was helpful, at least from a general perspective, to understand the differences. So with that being said, we can jump into the questions really quickly. I did want to put this slide up here. I'm Dylan. This is pre-COVID beard Dylan. Probably time to shave this, Federica. We were talking earlier about how COVID's hopefully going to be wrapping up after this big wave. That'll be when I finally shave the beard. But anywho, if you have any questions about any specific program, certainly reach out to me, and I can always put you in touch with one of my colleagues. But just so you get a sense of who in our office oversees which respective program, please feel free to email us at any time. We're here to help support you. If you have questions about the program, if you have questions about the application process, don't hesitate to reach out. But yeah, Federica, we can certainly jump into some questions now.
Absolutely. So we have questions. So Maria is asking if it's possible to move from one program to another. So in case, let's say you start with a specialized master, you realize it's not the right fit. Can you move? Maybe you have some sort of exam validated. How does it work?
Yeah, typically there have been some cases where people have transferred programs. I would say hopefully we identify those potential people who want to switch before you start the program. That would be our goal. We generally, that will actually happen quite frequently. You know, a student will apply to a specialized master's degree. They'll be admitted to that degree, and then we, you know, in conversations with that student, you know, we realize, well, really what they want is a mid-career shift. They might be a better fit for the MBA, and so we'll convert their application to an MBA program, or vice versa, right? People who want to go to the specialized master's front. So we want to work with you. At the end of the day, we want you to pick the right program. We're not in the business of putting you in a program that you don't want to be in. I would say it gets a little bit more complicated once you've started a program to switch and not lose any time. You know, typically you'd have to start the program that you switch into at the very beginning, so you might have to start, you know, the following fall. But again, hopefully we identify those cases before the programs even start.
Perfect. Questions about the MBA, if it's actually recognized in other countries. Someone's writing us from Colombia asking if there is also the online option. I believe you mentioned earlier, but maybe we can just explain a little bit more.
For sure. Yeah. You know, these degrees are universally recognized, right? You know, MBA degrees exist everywhere. And obviously they have their differences as far as focus and you know, potential career outcomes. But these are, you know, at their core, all management degrees, and certainly recognized by all employers. We didn't go specifically into the different types of MBA programs, but that is a great point that I primarily focused on full-time MBA programs in this session, but especially in urban areas, in-person part-time MBA programs are very popular. That's what I did here in New York. I did a part-time MBA. I wasn't looking to make a career change. I just wanted that management degree. And so I did a part-time MBA. I kept my job and I went to classes in the evening. Those exist all over the world as well. And then now on top of that, you have online programs, which I would also add are for working professionals. So you don't have to quit your job. You're taking these classes online. So there are, even within the MBA world, there are, you know, differences. There's also executive MBAs, right, which are degrees for people who have, you know, 15 years of work experience and they want to go and you know, pursue their executive MBA degree. So there's a lot of research to be done on the differences, but certainly you know, quitting your job is not necessarily a prerequisite. If you want to get an MBA degree, you can pursue them part-time as well.
Perfect. Asking if there is opportunity to have, let's say, a meeting to discuss in detail what can be better, and asking if actually the application process is the same if you're interested in a master in an MBA. So for example, if you need to go through an interview or any sort of assessment, if it's the same or if there are any differences.
Yeah. To answer the first part of that question, absolutely. This is, you know, people call us admissions officers. I think that's a terrible name for us because officers has a very kind of militant connotation. We are counselors. We're here to help. We're here to make sure you're picking the right program. We're here to help you throughout the application process. So if you're in a position where you're not entirely quite sure what you want, send me an email and we can schedule a time to chat on the phone or via Zoom, and we can certainly help you out. My general advice when it comes to making that decision is to work backwards. So start with where you want to end up, right? Identify the industries, the functional roles that you want to take on, and then work backwards. Let that determine the type of program you apply to. But again, we can get into specific cases. So just shoot me an email and I'm happy to you know, give you some counseling on that. And then when it comes to admissions requirements, so with the exception of the work experience prerequisite, which is you know, really important for an MBA applicant, the other application components are the same, right? So your undergraduate transcripts, interview, recommendation letters, you know, you'll fill out an online application. So the rest are fairly similar. But again, the work experience is what is the most important for a full-time MBA or a part-time MBA applicant at Gabelli. So making sure that your resume is really refined, and that you've been, very specific about what you've done. I think that's something we weigh very heavily, where we're not really considering it as much for a specialized master's student.
Perfect. So talking a little bit more about the Gabelli School of Business, they're asking us how many international students you have, so the cohort, what they can expect.
Yeah, great question. So we actually, hold on, I'll keep this slide up in a second. I just wanted to, because I can show you, so we have, this is for our fall 2021. So we had about 48% of our student body was international for fall 2021. Full disclosure, that number is a little bit higher than what it normally is. We had a lot of deferrals because of that little thing called COVID that happened in 2020. So a lot of international students weren't able to make it to New York in 2020. So they deferred to fall 2021. I would say typically we're around the 35% international student range for the full-time MBA. I think the other, one of the things I love the most about our cohort is the geodiversity within our cohort. So, 48%, that's a stat. But I think what's more important is that we have over 26 countries represented. So we have people all over the world. Colombia and Mexico are actually represented. We have a couple Colombians and one student from Mexico this year, and really all over the world. When it comes to our specialized master's program, so the international percentage is a little bit higher for our specialized master's programs. I don't think we have it up on this slide, but typically around 70% across all the programs are international for specialized master's programs. And I mentioned this at the very beginning, but specialized master's degrees are, the states are well behind the rest of the world when it comes to specialized master's degrees in business. They weren't on people's radars until about 10 years ago, whereas specialized master's degrees in business in Europe have been a thing for a long time. And so there is a little bit of catching up as Americans, especially undergrads, are looking to pursue business degrees. This influx of specialized master's degrees is relatively new. So that number is definitely trailing really at all business schools. It's typically much more international at most American business schools.
Good. Connection with companies. So before you actually were mentioning some programs have sort of internship. There is definitely the link with the work. Just asking if you have any strong connection and if you can name some of the companies that you work for, maybe some of the projects that students are actually working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, listen, one of the, hold on, I'm going to quickly pull up a slide that I think I hit, because I think it will help describe. Let's see here. Can you guys see this? Actually, let me unhide it.
Yes, so we can see. It's not full screen, but we can see. Yes. Yeah. Now we can see properly.
This is just a snapshot because we work with so many different companies, and this is just for a full-time MBA. But you would see for specialized masters, it's a very similar group of companies across industry. That our value add as a business school is that we are in the business capital of the world. We are in Midtown, right? I'm going to go get lunch after this, and I'll be surrounded by all the big consulting firms and right next to JP Morgan, right? I mean, we're surrounded by these companies. And I think as one of the oldest institutions in New York City, we have pipelines to all these companies, right? We have over 10,000 Fordham alums, whether they're Fordham Business School alums or Fordham Law School alums or Fordham undergrad alums. There are so many Fordham people in New York City working in all different types of companies. And one thing that you will hear constantly, whether you're in a specialized master's degree or an MBA degree, is that you can get perfect grades in all of your classes, but if you are not networking, if you are not connecting with people in industry, you are not going to get a job, or you're not going to get the caliber of job that you could potentially get if you were networking. That is the reality of the nature of these positions. They are extremely competitive. We work very closely with our employer counterparts, the people who work in HR, to get a sense of kind of how their hiring practice works. I was having coffee with our counterpart at one of the big bulge bracket banks, and she was explaining that roughly 80%, if not more, of their hires are internal referrals, meaning there's the stack of hundreds of thousands of applications for people who like go onto the online portal and decide to submit an application and kind of pray and hope that they'll get a call back. Usually about 15%, 20% are the ones that actually get hired from that pool. Everyone else came from an employee at the company who said, "Hey, HR, I just met this person. Here's their resume. You should reach out to them. They seem like they'd be a good fit here." And their policy is that every person who gets referred gets an interview, right? So you bypass that stack of resumes of people who apply online. That is the nature of hiring for these competitive positions, regardless of industry, whether it's big marketing firms or big financial services firms. Referrals are the way for HR departments to really kind of cut through all of these applications and find talent. So what that means is you got to go out and meet people, right? You have to attend the networking events that are put on by the Career Development Center. That means going on LinkedIn and saying, "Hey, I'm Dylan. I'd love to work. I see that you work at Goldman Sachs. I see that you're a Fordham alum. I am literally 7 minutes away from you. You name the day, you name the place. It can be tomorrow. It can be 2 months from now. But love to just have a cup of coffee with you and learn more about what it's like to work at Goldman Sachs." If that person takes a liking to you, they'll pass on your resume, and already you're in a much better position to land a job. So the employer outreach, whether it is as an MBA student or a specialized master's student, is critical. And actually, if there's the one takeaway from this entire presentation, because I know I have a tendency to rant, but it's that you have to network. No one likes to do it. Oftentimes international students tell me, well, I'm not a good networker. Americans know how to network. No one likes to network. No one likes to meet people they've never met before with an ulterior motive. But that is the game you have to play. And especially if you're coming to a place like Fordham, where you have that unique advantage of being surrounded by all these companies, you would be doing yourself a disservice if you weren't, trying to make as many connections as you can.
That's actually great. I mean, it's such a good advice because, as you said, I mean, you hear lots of different stories and you meet lots of different students, and it is important. And the whole reason why you probably decide to enroll into a master's or an MBA is probably because of that. And actually also moving abroad, because I mean, we're talking to international students, is also great because you move out from your comfort zone, but definitely you're going to achieve a lot. So
100%. That is the comfort zone term is perfect, because that's our old MBA program director would say, if you are comfortable in business school, then you're not doing it right. You should be uncomfortable. That is how you grow, right? And moving to a country that you've never lived in, and certainly coming to a place like New York City, which is like its own different country. I grew up in the States, but when I moved to New York, that was a big learning curve. But certainly, making that decision is already a step in the right direction.
About moving out from the comfort zone, we have someone that says, what kind of background is necessary to apply? I believe they're talking about an MBA because they say, I'm actually a doctor. Or, sometimes I hear stories about, I'm an engineer. Am I okay? Yeah. Is it okay for me to apply? So what could be your advice in this case?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a question I field regularly. It all comes down to what you ultimately want to do. And what you've been doing before. I think one of the big misconceptions that a lot of students have is that, if I didn't work in business, then I can't be admitted into an MBA program. That could not be further from the truth. Federica, you mentioned engineers. We have engineers are one of our biggest subpopulations outside of business. We have mechanical, civil, electrical engineers that come through and are they already have a very strong quantitative and kind of managerial mindset, right? As an engineer, you're managing projects, and that translates extremely well in the business world. So there is no one size fits all. You have to have worked in finance or business to be admitted into an MBA. It's really what regardless of the industry that you worked in, it's being clear that you've had some sort of management experience, right? And management comes in a lot of different forms. It's not necessarily managing a budget. It's managing people, managing projects, like I mentioned. So that can happen in education, that can happen in the nonprofit space, that can happen in engineering, you name it. What I will say is, as far as background, where we start to evaluate background is when it comes to feasibility of your desired career goals. So that's a really important piece of advice I'll give to any MBA applicant here. When we are evaluating you, we are evaluating, we're looking at you through the perspective of not only a business school, but also an employer, right? We pretend that we are an employer. And so we look at your essay. That's going to be a common essay that you'll answer at most MBA programs when you're applying. What are your short-term career goals? Where do you want to end up? What type of industry? What type of role? And we have a good sense of what employers for those positions are looking for. So if we don't feel like your background is going to be something that an employer will consider for the position that you're looking to start, we won't admit you. And that is because we don't want to set you up for failure. We're not going to have you invest all this money into a program where you get straight A's, but employers are they don't think you're competitive enough based on your background. So, and that's something we're very upfront with our students about that early on in the process. I'll give you an example of where that's very common. People who want to do big bulge bracket bank investment banking. I want to be an investment banker at Goldman Sachs. That's one of the most competitive positions in the world. And you're talking about getting hired into an associate level position at one of the biggest banks in the world. They're very strict about the type of background you need to have, right? If you've worked as a teacher for 4 years, and listen, I work in education, I know how skillful educators are. Goldman Sachs will not hire you as an investment banker if you were a teacher for 4 years. That's just the reality. And we certainly will have conversations with applicants about that. It's actually one of the reasons we introduced a second essay question where we ask them to have a plan. What's your plan B? If your plan A does not materialize career-wise, what would be your backup? Because I think it is important in some cases, depending on how competitive the career goal is, that you have flexibility to potentially pivot into something that's more realistic.
Good. We mentioned before that there are different ways of actually approaching the MBA. It could be full-time, could be part-time and online. We also mentioned that, we have to address the fact that we are now in a situation where, COVID is out there. And so they're asking us if it is possible perhaps to start online, and then why not at some point move to the in-presence program?
Yeah, we've been very flexible with our, in particular, international students, or even domestic students who, for whatever reason, may not feel comfortable being in a place like New York City when there's a pandemic going on. So certainly we'll treat these all on a case-by-case basis, but I can also speak for my peers at other business schools that these past couple of years, and certainly there will be carryover in the next couple of years, business schools will work with you to make it happen. It's, there's so many different factors, a lot of them, related to getting visa appointments, right? That's been a huge issue for a lot of students. And so we're not going to penalize you because the embassy is closed. We will work with you so that you can take some of these classes online. For example, we actually created a small subsection of our cohort to be online. And then as they were prepared to come, they would come and get switched into the in-person cohort. But certainly we were adapting so that everyone was getting their needs met.
Good. Well, coming towards the end of our presentation today, also wanted to remind you all, first of all, thanks for attending. We will be sending you an email. Dylan before was sharing a slide with also some contact information. As you see, I mean, they're very approachable at Gabelli School of Business. So any sort of questions that you might have, those are the right people that you can go and ask. Even if it's just, you know, an advice, or would you like to look into my resume? Am I doing the right choice? Also, because I mean, we do understand it's a great step, is investing time, money, moving country, and definitely important to make sure that you are doing the right decision. Wanted to ask you, Dila, one final question. If there is any sort of advice that you feel like giving to someone who's thinking about applying, or maybe, you know, just thinking about, can this be the right step for me?
Yeah. I think you just touched upon one piece of advice, which is reach out to business schools. You know, obviously there's a lot of research that you can be doing online. I think actually connecting with someone who either works at the business school, or what I think in many cases could be even better is a current student or a former student who went through the program. And sometimes the admissions office can be the liaison to help, you know, make those introductions. Those conversations are going to provide you with tremendous insights. And I think that a lot of those insights aren't necessarily ones that you can find on the internet. You really have to have a conversation with someone. So make sure you do your research, and just as a general piece of advice, you know, this is not something you want to rush into. I think Federica put it perfectly. This is a transformational life decision. Huge investment of money, of time, of, you know, you're changing up, you know, where you're living, you know, whatever it might be. This is not something that you should do uninformed. You should not rush into it. And at the end of the day, having those conversations with people, getting a sense of, you know, what specific programs have to offer, what specific business schools, you know, how they're different from one another, that will just help you be more informed in making your decision, and it'll you know, result in you having a more successful experience if you've done your research on the front end, and you know, you make those connections early on.
Great. So thank you, Dylan. Thanks for your valuable advices and for this presentation. Thank you all for attending the event. Watch your inbox, because we will be sending you some extra information. We will be sending you a brochure for the program, some link to the website where you can actually find some extra info, also on things that maybe we didn't have time to touch upon today. And we look forward to seeing you soon. We do have some other webinars with the Gabelli School of Business scheduled, so we will be reaching out to you. So in case, you know, you still would like to find out more, it's great opportunity to attend those webinars and ask any sort of question that you might have. So thank you so much, Dylan. Thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.